Back in 2022, a video went viral that looked like the most clear-cut slam dunk confession you could ever imagine from a pretty notorious hacker.
Nothing scares me. Nothing. Yes, I doxed the truckers! I did it! It was me! I hacked Give Send Go, baby! And I do it again! I do it 100 times! I did it! I did it! Come at me! What are you gonna do? I hacked Epic Hosting! I hacked Parler! I hacked Gab! I hacked Truth Social! You can literally put my name into the news tab on Google, and you can find everything I've done! I am literally in every mainstream media publication for the things that I do. I'm not an unknown actor. I'm literally a famous fucking cyberterrorist. You have no idea who the hell I am.
It was loud, it was public, and it seemed like there was zero room for doubt. But what if I told you the entire thing? The whole story was completely misunderstood. That's Aubrey Cottle. You might know him as Kirtaner, a major figure tied to the hacktivist group Anonymous, and he's broadcasting this live on TikTok to thousands of people. He isn't just dropping hints here. He is screaming from the digital rooftops, taking credit for all sorts of high-profile hacks. And you better believe law enforcement was listening. The FBI saw this and didn't think twice. To them, this wasn't just some empty boast. It was a public admission of guilt. They took these videos and ran with them, building a whole case, subpoenaing records, and connecting the dots. In their eyes, this was case closed. So let's take a look at what this so-called viral confession actually led to. Because, the reality on the ground, it paints a very, very different picture from the all-powerful cyberterrorist we just heard from. The real-world consequences hit fast, and they hit hard. On August 30th, 2022, Canadian police raid his home.
Raided by FBI, what happened? There is an active investigation into something Anonymous allegedly did last September. And they came and seized all of my equipment and my phones and my Guy Fawkes mask.
And they take everything. We're talking computers, phones, even a massive 20-terabyte server. They literally bagged his iconic Guy Fawkes mask as evidence. Then, just a few days later, he gets evicted, for unrelated reasons, by the way, and ends up homeless, actually living out of his car. That doesn't exactly scream untouchable criminal mastermind, does it? And this is the central question, isn't it? How does a self-proclaimed famous cyber terrorist, a guy who thinks nobody can scare him, end up with all his worldly possessions in the back of a car? Well, the answer might not be in a criminal's playbook. It might actually be in a medical diagnosis. The key to unlocking all of Cottle's bizarre behavior could be right here: stimulant psychosis. This is a state brought on by amphetamines that creates this incredibly powerful delusion of grandeur. You don't just feel confident. No, you feel invincible. You feel godlike. You feel absolutely untouchable. Now, a rational criminal, they encrypt their data. Cottle, on the other hand, left 20 terabytes of it wide open for the taking. A rational actor tries to avoid detection. Cottle broadcast his crimes on TikTok for the world to see.
Oh, and the hole is still there as we speak. Call me.
This wasn't some calculated risk. This was the behavior of someone in what you could call God mode, a manic state where consequences aren't just ignored, they are literally impossible to even imagine. So here's the crucial point. It wasn't an act of aggression. It was an act of pure desperation. It was this deep, pathological need to be seen, to feel powerful, and it was all driven by this profound fear of being ignored, of being powerless. And to really understand that fear, we have to go back. I mean, way back. Because this kind of seemingly self-destructive behavior, it doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was forged decades ago in a place that was actually designed to control him. So when he was around 12 or 13 years old, Cottle was involuntarily committed to a mental health facility. The reason? Apparently a severe behavioral crisis. He was being chronically bullied, and he ended up making threats against his peers. Then, after he was released, he created 420chan, an online image board. And what's fascinating is that it basically digitized the environment he'd just been forced out of. It became a space for outcasts and the marginalized to gather without being judged. And this is where that Kirtaner persona really starts to take shape. You see, it wasn't just about ego or being a narcissist. It was a defense mechanism. It was a survival strategy, a way to project power and control in a world where he felt like he had absolutely none.
You have to understand this split, this compartmentalization that really defined his life. Aubrey Cottle was the name on the patient's chart. He was the victim, the problem child. But Kirtaner, well, Kirtaner was in charge. Kirtaner was the admin, the hacker. Kirtaner was the one with all the power. And Kirtaner couldn't be hurt.
So this brings us to this core conflict, right? This deep psychological battle between the patient and the outlaw. And really, understanding this split is the absolute key to reframing everything we saw at the very beginning of this explainer. Which, of course, brings us all the way back to the main question. After digging into the psychological backstory, the trauma, and the very likely impact of stimulant psychosis, can we honestly still call that TikTok video a simple confession? This is really the choice we're left with. Was this a calculated, voluntary admission of serious federal crimes? Or was it a man, likely under the influence of amphetamines and reliving some deep-seated trauma, having a complete psychological collapse on a public stage? Think about it. In pretty much any other context, a confession made while someone is chemically compromised is legally inadmissible. It gets thrown right out of court. So the real question is, why is the internet, and more importantly the FBI, treating this specific one as the undeniable truth? The Department of Justice, they see a monster. They see a famous cyberterrorist. But this psychological analysis, it suggests they might just be hunting an exhausted person who was deep in a manic, sleep-deprived state, just performing a caricature of power because deep down, he felt he had none. Ultimately, that line between a confession and a cry for help can be incredibly blurry. And in the case of Aubrey Cottle, it really forces us to ask a tough question. Are we watching a criminal confess his guilt, or are we just witnessing a public health crisis play out in real time on the TikTok livestream for the whole world to see?